There once lived a man named Musa, who owned nothing in this world except a gray donkey with ears longer than memory and eyes deeper than a well at midnight. Musa had the kind of face that made merchants hide their goods and children stop crying just to stare. His beard grew in 7 different directions. His turban sat on his head like a bird's nest abandoned in spring, and his robe had been patched so many times that no one, including Musa himself, could remember its original color. People in the villages he passed through called him simple. They called him touched by the moon. They called him a fool who talked to his donkey as if the beast could answer. What they did not know, and what Musa never bothered to explain, was that sometimes the donkey did answer. Not with words, of course, but with the slow blink of those ancient eyes, the thoughtful twitch of those magnificent ears, and a silence so profound it made words seem like noise. On the day our story begins, Musa and his donkey arrived at the village of Qamara, which sat between 2 hills like a child sleeping between its parents. The market square was full of the usual chaos, sellers shouting about dates and olives, women bargaining for cloth, and old men sitting beneath the tea-house awning, watching everything and saying nothing. Musa tied his donkey to a wooden post near the well and went to buy bread. This simple act would have passed without notice if the donkey had not immediately begun to drink from the water trough meant for horses. "Your animal has no manners," said a large man in a fine green robe. This was Hassan, the horse trader, who believed that his horses were the finest in 7 provinces, and donkeys were barely better than large dogs with delusions of importance. Musa scratched his head in a way that made him look even more foolish than before. "I apologize, friend, but you see, my donkey cannot read." "Cannot read? What does reading have to do with drinking from the horse trough?" "Well," said Musa slowly, "there is no sign here saying that donkeys may not drink. My donkey, being unable to read, cannot obey a sign that does not exist. But I see that you can read, and yet you too cannot follow this sign that is not there. So perhaps the trouble is not with my donkey at all." Hassan's face turned the color of ripe pomegranate. The old men under the tea-house awning began to chuckle, covering their mouths with wrinkled hands. A child laughed openly until his mother pulled him away. "You mock me," said Hassan through clenched teeth. "Mock you? I would never dream of such a thing. I am merely a simple man trying to understand the rules of your fine village. If my donkey has caused offense, surely we can settle this peacefully." "How?" Musa reached into his robe and produced a single copper coin, so worn that the face on it had long ago become a mystery. "I will give you this coin as payment for the water my donkey drank." Hassan looked at the coin as if Musa had offered him a dead fish. "That is worthless." "Worthless?" He held it up to the light. "This coin has traveled through more hands than you have sold horses. It has been given in love, stolen in greed, lost in sorrow, and found in joy. It carries the history of 100 villages. Can you say the same about any of your horses?" The old men were laughing openly now. Even some merchants had stopped their selling to listen. Hassan, realizing he had somehow lost this exchange without understanding how, waved his hand in disgust. "Keep your coin and keep your donkey. Just stay away from my horses." He marched away, and the market returned to its normal rhythm, as if a stone tossed into a pond had finished making its ripples. Musa bought his bread, untied his donkey, and found a quiet spot beneath an old fig tree at the edge of the square. The donkey settled beside him, chewing slowly on nothing in particular. "Well," said Musa quietly, "we have made our first friend in Qamara." The donkey blinked. "Yes," Musa agreed. "He does not know he is our friend yet, but the best friendships often begin this way." He broke his bread, gave half to the donkey, and watched the afternoon shadows grow longer across the worn market stones.
Somewhere in the village, a woman began singing a song about waiting for rain. The sun continued its slow journey west, and the village of Qamara went about its business, unaware that anything unusual had arrived in their midst.
The next morning, Musa woke beneath the fig tree to find a small crowd gathered around him. Not the friendly kind of crowd that brings bread and welcomes strangers, but the suspicious kind that keeps its hands on its coin purses. At the front stood a man with a beard like a storm cloud and robes the color of fresh ink. This was the village Qadi, Judge Said, whose job it was to solve disputes, interpret laws, and generally make sure that everyone behaved themselves, or at least appeared to. "You are the one they call the Fool of the Road?" Judge Said asked. Musa sat up slowly, picking bits of dried fig leaf from his beard. "I have been called many things, honored sir. Some of them were even polite. I am told that yesterday you insulted Hassan the horse trader." "Did I? I only discussed the nature of signs and the value of coins. If he found insult in these topics, perhaps the insult was already living in his heart before I arrived." The crowd murmured. Judge Said stroked his magnificent beard, which he did whenever he needed time to think. "You have a quick tongue for a simple man." "My tongue moves at exactly the speed Allah gave it, honored sir. It is not my fault if others move more slowly." More murmuring. The judge decided to change his approach. "There is a matter I wish to discuss with you, a test, if you will. We have heard that you claim your donkey is wiser than most men." Musa glanced at his donkey, who was calmly eating grass and pretending not to listen. "I have never claimed such a thing. I have only observed that my donkey listens more than he speaks, which is more than I can say for most men I have met. Whether this makes him wise, I leave for others to judge." "Very well," said the judge, with the smile of someone who believes he has set an unbeatable trap. "Tomorrow at noon I will gather the village elders in the tea-house. You will bring your donkey. We will ask the donkey a question. If the donkey answers correctly, you may stay in our village and receive a reward. If the donkey cannot answer, you will leave and never return." The crowd buzzed with excitement. A talking donkey, or the humiliation of a wandering fool. Either way, excellent entertainment for a boring week. Musa scratched his head in that peculiar way of his. "May I ask what question you will put to my donkey?" "We will ask him, who is the wisest man in Qamara?" "Ah," Musa nodded slowly, "that is indeed a difficult question, even for a donkey as thoughtful as mine." "Then you refuse the challenge?" "I did not say that." Musa looked around at the gathered faces, some curious, some mocking, some simply bored. "I only said it was difficult. Difficult things are the only ones worth doing. We will be there tomorrow at noon." Judge Said nodded with satisfaction and led the crowd away, already imagining the fool's embarrassment and his own certain victory. When they were alone, Musa leaned close to his donkey. "Did you hear that? They want you to reveal the wisest man in the village." The donkey continued eating grass, his ears rotating slightly like two small sails catching the wind. "What will you do?" The donkey raised his head and looked at Musa with those deep, ancient eyes. Then he went back to eating grass. "I see. Yes, that is very clever indeed. I should have thought of it myself." He spent the rest of the day wandering through the market, listening to conversations, buying nothing, and talking to everyone who would speak about the challenge tomorrow. By evening, the entire village knew about it. Even the children were discussing whether donkeys could speak and what language they might use. That night, Musa and his donkey slept beneath the stars, which seemed to watch the village with gentle and somewhat amused attention. The moon rose slowly, like an old man climbing stairs.
"Do you think they will be angry tomorrow?" Musa asked the darkness. The donkey shifted in his sleep but did not answer. "No," Musa continued, as if he had heard a reply. "I do not think so either. The best lessons are the ones we teach ourselves. Others can only point at the door." He pulled his thin blanket closer against the cooling air and closed his eyes. Somewhere in the village, a dog barked once and fell silent. The fig tree's leaves whispered secrets to each other that no human ear could understand.
The tea house was fuller than it had been in years. Every seat was taken, and latecomers stood along the walls like books crammed onto an overstuffed shelf. The air smelled of strong tea, tobacco smoke, and human anticipation. Judge Saeed sat at the center table with the three village elders, old Hakim, the retired physician, wise Fatima, who owned more land than anyone remembered, and ancient Yusuf, who claimed to have once met the Sultan's grandfather's cook. Musa arrived precisely at noon, leading his donkey through the low doorway. The beast seemed unconcerned by the attention. He walked to the center of the room, sniffed once at the judge's robe, and stood quietly as if waiting for something interesting to happen. "So," announced Judge Saeed in his most official voice, "the fool of the road has come with his talking donkey. The question we put to this animal is simple. Who is the wisest man in Qamara?" The crowd held its breath. Some leaned forward, others covered their smiles. Musa patted his donkey's neck. "Go on, answer the judge." The donkey stood motionless. "Well," said the judge, after a long pause, "where is this great wisdom we have read about?" "Please, honored sir, give him a moment. He is thinking." Laughter rippled through the crowd like wind through barley. The donkey turned his head slowly, looking at each person in the room. His gaze lingered at the judge, then moved to the three elders, then swept across the assembled villagers. Finally, he walked forward 3 careful steps and stopped directly in front of Fatima, the landowner. He stood there, looking at her, and did not move. The room fell silent. "What is this?" demanded the judge. "I believe," said Musa slowly, "that my donkey has answered your question." "He has said nothing." "He has said everything, honored sir. You asked who is the wisest man in Qamara. My donkey has walked to the wisest person in the room. He cannot help it if your question was poorly worded." Fatima laughed, a genuine surprised laugh that made her seem 30 years younger. The crowd began to buzz with whispered comments. "This is a trick," said the judge, his face darkening. "A trick. My donkey merely walked forward. Is it a trick when the sun rises in the east? Is it a trick when water flows downhill? You asked a question, and he answered it in the only way a donkey can, through his actions. What did you expect, that he would open his mouth and recite poetry?" Old Hakim chuckled. Even ancient Yusuf smiled behind his spotted hand. But the judge struggled for words, which was usually for a man who had built his life on them. "But you have not proven anything. He could have walked to anyone." "Could he? Then why did he stop at the one person here who listens more than she speaks, the one who feeds the hungry without announcing it to the market, the one who has settled disputes with a quiet word than this tea house is seen in a year?" The crowd turned to look at Fatima, who suddenly seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "I only do what is right," she said quietly. "And that," said Musa, "is exactly what makes you wise. My donkey knows this because he has spent his whole life watching people. Animals see what we hide. They have no interest in our words, only in our actions." Judge Saeed stood up abruptly. "This is not what I intended." "Few things are,"
"Honored sir, we set traps thinking we are hunters and discover we were the prey all along. But there is no shame in this. The truly wise are those who learn from their surprises." The judge stood frozen for a moment, pride and humility wrestling behind his eyes. Finally, something in him relaxed. He sat back down, looking at Musa with new eyes. "You are not the fool you appear to be." "Perhaps, or perhaps I am exactly the fool I appear to be, and fools sometimes stumble upon wisdom by accident. Who can say? Not me, certainly. I am only a man with a donkey who walked in the right direction." The tea-house erupted into conversation. Someone ordered another round of tea. The afternoon light slanted through dusty windows, turning ordinary faces golden. Musa led his donkey outside, where the air was fresh and the noise of human voices faded into the background sounds of village life. They found their spot beneath the fig tree and sat together in comfortable silence. "You did well," Musa said, eventually. The donkey closed his eyes in the warm afternoon sun, dreaming of whatever it is that wise donkeys dream.
3 days passed in the village of Qamara, and in that time Musa became something of a local curiosity. Children followed him through the streets, asking questions he answered with questions of his own. Merchants offered him tea, hoping perhaps that some of his strange luck would rub off on them. Even Hassan the horse trader had begun nodding politely when they crossed paths, though he still kept his horses at a safe distance from the donkey. It was on the evening of the 3rd day that trouble arrived. His name was Rashid, and he came from a larger village 2 days' travel to the east. He was young, well-dressed, and possessed the kind of confidence that comes from having never been truly hungry or truly afraid. He had heard about the strange wanderer and his wise donkey, and he had come to expose what he was certain was a fraud. "I challenge you," Rashid announced in the market square, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I challenge you to prove your donkey's wisdom is real." Musa was sitting near the well, sharing a melon with his donkey. He looked up with mild interest. "Another challenge? I have barely recovered from the last one." "This will be simple. I have here a purse containing 3 objects." He held up a leather pouch. "1 is valuable, 2 are worthless. If your donkey is truly wise, let him choose the valuable object. If he chooses correctly, I will give you 10 gold coins. If he fails, you will admit publicly that you are a fraud." The crowd that had gathered murmured with excitement. 10 gold coins was a fortune. "What objects are in the purse?" Musa asked. "That is not your concern. The test is whether your donkey can find value where it is hidden." Musa glanced at his donkey, who had stopped chewing melon and was watching Rashid with those deep, thoughtful eyes. The donkey's left ear twitched once, a movement so small that only Musa noticed it. "Very well," said Musa. "We accept your challenge, but I have one condition." "What condition?" "After my donkey chooses, you must tell us truthfully what makes the chosen object valuable. Not its price, but its worth. These are different things." Rashid laughed. "You speak in riddles. Fine, I agree. Let the test begin." He opened the purse and placed 3 items on a cloth before the donkey: a gold ring engraved with intricate patterns, a plain copper bracelet worn smooth with age, and a small wooden carving of a bird. "Choose," Rashid commanded. The donkey lowered his great head and sniffed each object carefully. He lingered longest over the copper bracelet, his nostrils flaring slightly. Then, slowly, he pushed it toward Musa with his nose. Rashid burst into triumphant laughter. "You see, he chooses the worthless copper. The gold ring is worth 100 times as much. Your donkey is a fool, and you are a fraud." But the crowd had not joined his laughter. They were watching Musa, who had picked up the bracelet and was turning it over in his weathered hands.
You agreed to tell us what makes the valuable object valuable. Tell us about the gold ring." Rashid shrugged. "It is gold, pure gold, finely worked. I bought it from a jeweler." "And what makes it worth something to you?" It is gold. Gold is valuable everywhere." "I see. And this bracelet, where does it come from?" Rashid's confidence flickered for just a moment. "It was my mother's. She wore it every day until she died. I kept it only because I thought it might be useful for a test like this." The crowd's silence grew deeper. Musa held up the bracelet. "My donkey has chosen the most valuable object in your purse, not the most expensive, but the most valuable. This bracelet holds the love of a mother, the memory of her hands, the echo of her voice. Your gold ring can be melted and remade by anyone, but this bracelet is the only one in all the world that touched your mother's skin and knew her heartbeat." Rashid stood very still. His face had gone pale. "I did not realize," he whispered. "I kept it for a trick. I did not realize." He left the 10 gold coins on the cloth, picked up his ring and wooden bird, and walked away without another word. Musa watched him go. "Some lessons," he said to his donkey, "must be paid with tears. This is the only currency they accept." The crowd dispersed slowly, each person carrying something invisible with them. Evening came softly, like a mother covering her sleeping children.
On the morning of the 7th day, Musa began to pack his few belongings. The news spread through Qamara with the speed of rumor and the weight of something heavier. By the time the sun had fully risen, a small crowd had gathered beneath the fig tree, asking without asking why he was leaving. "There are other villages," Musa explained, tightening the straps on his donkey's back. "Other wells to drink from, other markets to confuse." "But you could stay," said a young woman who sold bread in the market. "We have made a place for you here." "That is precisely why I must go. A comfortable place is a dangerous thing for a man like me. I might begin to think I have arrived somewhere, and then where would I be?" The logic was strange enough that no one could argue with it. Judge Saeed arrived just as Musa was checking the donkey's hooves. The judge carried a small wooden box, which he presented with unusual formality. "The village council met last night. We wish you to have this." Musa opened the box. Inside lay a single piece of parchment and a small pouch of gold. "What is this?" "The parchment declares you an official wise man of Qamara. The gold is payment for the wisdom you have shared." Musa studied the parchment with apparent fascination. Then he handed the gold to the nearest child, a wide-eyed boy of perhaps 8 years. "Use this for your education," he told the boy. "Learn to read, then learn to question what you read, then learn to question your questions. After that, you will be wiser than I am." The boy's mother began to protest, but something in Musa's expression stopped her. As for the parchment, Musa carefully tore it into several pieces. "What are you doing?" the judge exclaimed. "I am freeing myself from a dangerous burden." Musa let the pieces fall. "If I carry a paper saying I am wise, people will believe it. Then they will stop thinking for themselves. Then I will stop thinking for myself. And then the paper will be a lie, and I will be trapped by a truth that became false the moment it was written." Old Fatima, who had walked slowly from her house to witness the departure, laughed her young woman's laugh. "You see," she said to the judge, "this is exactly why he cannot stay. He makes us uncomfortable in the ways we need to be uncomfortable." Musa bowed to her with genuine respect. "You understand." "I understand nothing," she replied, "but I am old enough to know that understanding is overrated." The donkey, who had been standing patiently through all of this, now began to walk toward the edge of the village. No one had given a command. He simply decided it was time to leave, and he left.
Musa followed, as he always did. The crowd watched them go, the tall, shabby man and the gray donkey with knowing eyes. They walked down the dusty road between the two hills, growing smaller with each step. "Will he come back?" someone asked. "Do rivers return to the springs that birthed them?" replied old Fatima. No one knew what that meant, but it sounded wise, so no one asked. The sun rose higher, the market opened, arguments resumed over olives, life continued as always, and yet somehow slightly differently. In the tea-house that evening, old men spoke of the wanderer as if he had been there for years. Stories were already growing, collecting details, becoming truer than truth. Meanwhile, somewhere on a road stretching toward the setting sun, a man walked beside his donkey, humming a song without words. "Where shall we go next?" he asked. The donkey turned his head eastward, then westward, then simply continued forward. "Yes," Musa agreed, "that is usually the best direction. Forward, always forward." The stars came out like old friends arriving at a gathering. And somewhere in a village between two hills, a boy who had been given gold for his education was asking his mother what questions meant. She did not know, but she let him keep asking.